I started writing music, I guess, I started, my first piece that I wrote was when I was going to Settlement Music School and I was in a theory class, and I wrote a classical piece when I was about 10 years old. But the first jazz, I guess, piece was probably when I was, 15 or 16, and then have been writing ever since. I think I was inspired by listening to other players like Oscar Peterson, Earl Garner, Amal Jamal, and some of the big bands, Maynard Ferguson, Dave Brubeck. In fact, I wrote a piece that we will do tonight. It's in honor of Oscar Peterson. So I guess a lot of different people inspired me. My progression as a writer of music was a bit erratic. I would write, sometimes I would just have a melody in my head and then just kind of put chords to it. Sometimes I started with a rhythm. There was no real rhyme or reason, and I did some of the pieces that I wrote were sort of funky and gospely, and some were more straight ahead, some were more modern, some were more traditional. And it just sort of, I guess, depended on what mood I was in. It's interesting that lately I've looked back and found some music of tunes that I've written and forgot completely about. Maybe 30 years ago I wrote them, and I like them. I think I'll try to resurrect them. The tune from the real book is called Old Bugs and New, and I think I wrote it in maybe about 10 years ago. It is on a CD, I have a 2010 CD called Posterity. And interesting thing, the title comes from, I think I had just heard that roaches were around long before humans and will still be around long after humans. So I think I just was into that kind of idea of old bugs. And also I had some old Volkswagens, some Volkswagen bugs. So it's kind of a double meaning. And interestingly, in the real book, I wrote it as a funk tune. And that's how I recorded it in 2010. But tonight, we are actually playing it as a swing. And one reason is because we have upright bass and not electric bass. So in keeping with a lot of jazz musicians and the idiom, this tune can be played as a funk tune or a Latin tune or a swing tune, which we will do tonight. It's very open. The players I'm playing with tonight, Bob Howell is on saxophone, and I've been working with Bob. He played on my first LP, 1984, called Posmontier Brothers Quintet, which I think I might have a few copies of the LP tonight to give away. So Bob has been great. He knows all my stuff, and we just kind of hook up musically. And Dave Brodie on bass, I've started playing with Dave only maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, and I just his groove on upright bass is just fits what I'm doing. So it's very comfortable playing, very musical guy. And Jimmy Coleman on drums. Jimmy is great. He can play swing, he can play funky, Latin. He can play anything, and he's just a good all-around drummer. He listens, and he fits into exactly what we're doing. So I'm fortunate to play with these guys. As far as feeling nurtured by the Philadelphia music scene, I'm fortunate because I came up, I played, I think mostly in the 70s and 80s, I played with a lot of great older jazz musicians, such as Tony Williams, Bootsy Barnes, Benny Nelson, Tommy Grice, and Mickey Roker, all these great players who were, at the time, a lot older than I was. And they sort of took me under their wings, and I played these gigs, and that's basically how I learned the craft. I didn't go to college for music, but I think I learned mostly from playing and playing with these great musicians. So for me, the Philadelphia jazz scene has always been there, and there's no lack of great musicians that will not only you can play with, but will also kind of help you along, especially if you're a younger musician. As I'm getting older, I would like to think that I also can help younger musicians who are getting into the jazz scene in Philadelphia, just the way I was helped by the older musicians. And in fact, my son, Alex, is an up-and-coming jazz pianist. And there are so many good young players. And it's always a thrill when I get to play with them. To me, jazz is multi-generational. There's a lot to be learned by the young musicians from the older musicians and vice versa. So I just hope it continues that way.